Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Today joining me is Nick Archuleta and is the president of North Dakota United. And we'll find out more about North Dakota United in just a few minutes. But Nick, as we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm originally from San Francisco. I was born there and have lived in New Mexico and in Denver. But my mother was from North Dakota, and we all knew we'd all end up back here sometime, and we did. I received my high school education, and my undergraduate work was completed at Valley City State University. I've earned my master's degree from the University of North Dakota.
Okay. Well, then what the path led you to become the president of the union?
Well, that's a good question. I have always belonged to a teaching union. When I started teaching in 1992 in a little town called Leroy, Minnesota, at that time, Education Minnesota was being born. It was the merged, the product of the merger of the Minnesota Education Association and the AFT of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And when I started teaching, I joined the union and saw what the union could do, and so I've been a member ever since. And then when I moved to North Dakota in 2000, it was a very natural thing for me to join the union and be involved there.
Yeah, but then talk about a little bit about the merger of, I guess, North Dakota Education Association and North Dakota Public Employees Association.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The North Dakota Education Association has been around since 1887. The North Dakota Public Employees Association was formed in 1964. Over the years, those two organizations since 1964 have worked together on various projects. We all represented public employees. Public school teachers are public employees. We worked together on some measure campaigns and some other advocacy things for public employees and teachers. So it was kind of a natural fit, having worked together on various projects to want to put them together. And so the process was begun. It took about 3 years, I suppose, from start to finish. And we have been merged now since September of 2013.
All right, so you've been merged less than 2 years then, mm-hmm. But how has the transition gone so far?
Well, merging two organizations is a relatively easy thing. Merging two cultures is a little bit more difficult. But we are making great strides in that area. We're more comfortable with each other. We've just completed our delegate assembly a couple of days ago, and people weren't talking about NDPEA, and they weren't talking about NDEA. They were talking about North Dakota United, and that's exactly where we wanted to be.
With that said, you gave us a little history of both unions with the years and things, but can you give us a little more background of the two unions at all?
Sure. The North Dakota Public Employees Association was affiliated with the American Federation of Teachers, and the North Dakota Education Association was affiliated with the National Education Association. The National Education Association is the larger of the two major education unions in the country, about twice the size, I suppose, of AFT. But together, those organizations can wield an awful lot of influence in the halls of Congress, and we're seeing that with the reauthorization of ESEA that's going on right now.
Okay. ESEA for those out there that
yeah, it's kind of easy to talk in jargon, but that is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it was started back in, I'm going to say, 1964 under Lyndon Johnson. And basically it was designed to give every kid a level playing field. It shouldn't matter what your zip code is, that shouldn't be the determining factor to what type of an education you're going to get.
Okay. How many members do you have in the union now? Obviously merging, did all members come?
Yeah, I think all members came, and some have joined, some have left, but overall our numbers are up from where they were on the day of the merger. We have roughly 11,360 members right now. We're looking at probably 82%, 83% are former NDEA members, and the rest are former NDPEA members. But as I mentioned, we're North Dakota United, and we're communicating in that way, and people are starting to think of us that way, and that was the goal.
Okay. Well, can you talk about what services do you provide to the NDU members? Yeah, North
Sure.
Dakota United.
I'd be happy to. We do a lot of things that are transactional. For example, you can get benefits that range from cheaper magazine subscriptions or discounts when you rent a car, travel, and hotel reservations, and that sort of thing. But the real benefit of belonging to North Dakota United is that you get to, you have a team that is constantly advocating on your behalf. And it's important for members to know, and this is what we tell them because it's absolutely true, that the values that they have as educators and the values that they have as public employees are the same values that are enshrined in our organization. Nobody goes into public service to become rich. In fact, they shouldn't to do that. I mean, but we know why they went into public service. We know why they wanted to help children. And so what we are trying to do is to make sure that their voice is being heard in the, for example, in the legislature, where so many decisions that affect their livelihoods are made.
Okay. Well, let's go to some policy issues. I guess let's talk about one that may be big. Your North Dakota public employees moved from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Sanford Insurance. Can you talk about that? It seems like there's been a lot of pushback on this.
Well, there has been, and it probably wasn't unexpected. As you may know, the Blue Cross Blue Shield was the provider of that insurance for 37 years. People get used to something when they've had it that long, and any change is going to spark a little bit of apprehension, shall we say, because they don't know it. You may have heard that the legislature, of course, had a bill in to make sure that all of the benefits that were aspects of the policy that Blue Cross Blue Shield was handling transferred to Sanford. Yeah, it was a big deal. The legislature, of course, uses the North Dakota PERS as well. So, of course, they wanted to make sure that it was as close to what they were used to getting as possible, and that's natural.
Yeah. Do you feel like that transferred over and everything is settling down?
I do. Right after that happened, I bet I was getting 10, 15 emails a day just asking about that question. Is the provider network the same? Are things being on the up and up? This seems like this happened very quickly. Those kinds of concerns. We've had Sanford come out to our advocacy conference that we had about a month ago in Bismarck. They stood for questions for a lot of them, and I asked several of the questions that came to me in emails. And I believe, I don't think I've gotten an email in the last 2 weeks over it, and I'm hoping that people are more comfortable with the decision.
Well, you probably just answered the next question. What do you think eventually happened with this initiative?
Well, I think what will happen with the legislation is I don't know that it'll go very far, simply because the contract has already been signed. I mean, I applaud the concern that the legislature had in making sure that the coverage was not less than what people are expected. That's terrific, but to go back now and add different provisions into a contract that's already been signed, it seems to me that you're just inviting litigation and lengthy litigation. Remember that the whole thing is up again in 2 years. They have to review it and see if they're both sides are doing what they've promised to do. So my view is let's just wait and see. Let's just see how this thing works out.
Okay. Well, can you talk about salaries and benefits for your members?
Sure, I sure can. One of the, well, I don't think it's something inherent or just the sole property of teachers and public employees. Everybody wants a fair salary. And I think that our organization has, for both organizations, predecessor organizations, fought for a long time to make sure those things were happening. Teachers in North Dakota are still paid something on the order of ranked 47th nationally as to what teachers get paid. Public employees in North Dakota, you saw this, there was a study that came out that showed that they also lag behind what the private sector in North Dakota is paying. In terms of benefits, the benefits exist. For example, the defined benefits pensions. Those exist to kind of make up for what people aren't making in wages. They work a long time for less than market value, then at least they can be assured of a good, reliable, not extravagant retirement.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what are some of the things you've been pushing for in this legislative session.
Well, we've been pushing to protect those pensions, of course, and I think we have been fairly successful at that. I think members of the legislature see the value in having a stable retirement for folks. That it helps to attract people to jobs with the state and with the different municipalities and counties, because it's a nice benefit. In terms of salaries, we think that we're going to, for public employees, end up with a 3% increase in both years of the next biennium. For educators, it's a little less certain right now. As we're taping this, of course, the legislature is still ongoing, and those are the bills that finish. The more expensive bills are always the last ones that they consider, because they do have to balance the budget, but you balance it by going where the money is, and if that's where the majority of the money is, that's what we'll see. However, with that said, I'm confident that they'll be able to afford something around 3% for each year, the biennium increase in the foundation spending. And of course, every school district is different. So it isn't like the state that when they deal with public employees, they can say, we're going to raise your pay X. And with K-12 teachers, for example, they look at that and they say, okay, is it going to be the same thing in Lakota as it is in Larimore? Those districts are different, and all of those individual contracts are negotiated between the local education association and the school board. And since every school board's situation is different, pay is different as well.
Okay. Well, I know your group supported the anti-discrimination bill that was voted down. What's been the reaction to that so far?
Well, among our members, there was a great deal of disappointment, to be honest with you. Teachers and public employees too, but this is especially true of teachers. They get it. They understand. They have a sense of fairness about them. Whether it's an elementary teacher and they can see what's going on a playground, they know what is fair and what is not. And they see it, as do the public employees, as just a matter of simple fairness in our state. Why would somebody be singled out of being protected? And I think, and you've seen this nationally, it's going to happen in North Dakota. I think that the people who voted against it just haven't been able to read the writing on the wall. This will come about.
Okay. Well, I believe you already talked about teachers' pay, about 47th that we rank. And but what about out in western North Dakota? What are the challenges, not just with the union, with the issues out there?
Well, there are some challenges that are unique to the western part of the state. They saw that mammoth and sudden growth in their communities, and part of the challenge for them, of course, is how are we going to attract and retain high quality educators? Mm-hmm. And of course, my answer is improve your salary schedules, give people a reason to move there. And I think that in a lot of instances, that's exactly what has happened. If you take a look at Ray, for example, a couple of years ago, they raised their starting salary, the base wage, to over $42,000. That was pretty good. That was back when Bismarck hadn't been at 40 yet. So we are very cognizant of the challenges that they face, and we are going to do everything we can to help those teachers negotiate a fair salary. One of the issues too is how do you attract teachers to that part of the country where rents are so very high, but salaries haven't risen to keep up with those things. It's an interesting challenge. In the public employees, we find that there are some areas where people have left. Let's just say that you operate a snowplow for the Department of Transportation. You have some skills that transfer directly into the higher paying oil field economy. If you have that CDL license, you can do it for this salary that you've always gotten, or you could take a quantum leap in salary and go to work for an oil company or an oil services company. So yeah, there are some real challenges out there that need to be addressed.
Well, it seems like I know the legislature they've been looking at that, I understand, about stipends or allowances or things.
Right.
Building things, or at least. Do you see the legislature taking issue with this?
I see them addressing it. I noticed, we all noticed that they passed that surge funding bill that put another $1 billion, more than $1 billion into those building some infrastructure in the West, as well as putting some money towards schools in those areas. And that was a step in the right direction for sure.
Okay. What are some of the key higher education issues that you have?
Well, this is a very good area to discuss. Let me just say that in the last two sessions, the real tragedy has been that people have been talking about university governance. And that conversation has been loaded with hyperbole and drama. What they're not talking about unfortunately, in my view, is the great research that's going on in our two research universities, the great teaching and learning that's going on the other campuses. There's an awful lot going on in the state in higher education, yet we tend to focus on that whole governance issue, that struggle between the legislature and the State Board of Higher Education, and who's going to call the shots. That's unfortunate. There are some issues that need to be addressed. I don't know if you knew this, but there's almost $800 million worth of deferred maintenance backlog right now on those campuses. We have issues with tenure and reappointment and promotion on some of our campuses. It's time to readdress some of those issues, as well as making sure that the people, the education support professionals that work on those campuses, are compensated fairly. I know that the legislature and individual legislators think that, okay, if we give them a 3% pay increase, then everybody that works for state government is going to get 3%. That's not always the case. We see that, for example, at the North Dakota State University here, I visited with two women that work in the library. Because the state has, they give them that money, and then the state has to pay people who, say, have improved their lot, earned tenure and promotion and that sort of thing, and then they pay them more, but by the time it gets to the paying the education support professionals, that 3% raise is maybe 1.5%, because they just didn't have enough funds. So those are issues that need to be addressed on our campuses for sure.
Well, can you talk some about what is Common Core and why there seem to be big issues with implementation of this?
Yeah, I can. This, of course, was the issue of the first half of the legislature. And we, of course, took a position of not withdrawing from the consortium and Common Core. Common Core basically was established by the Council of Chief State School Officers. The worst acronym in the world, by the way. But they established this, and they were acting at the behest of their governors, many of them Republican governors, with a great idea. Why should Algebra 2 be different in Tennessee as it is in Bismarck, North Dakota? If you're teaching these classes, they should transfer. And so that a kid who might move from one state to another would be at the same place academically when they got to where they were going. The Common Core state standards are just that, they're standards. And I think a lot of the controversy was that there are some folks that just think that standards are the same things as curriculum, and that's not the truth. Standards are basically things that you should know at different levels or at different spots along your academic continuum. So if you're in this grade at this time of the year, you should have these skills. And so forth as you go down the line. Curriculum is basically how do you get those standards? How do you get those skills? And that's always been something that has been decided locally. And nothing about Common Core would have changed that. Do the standards drive the curriculum? Absolutely they do. But is the curriculum decided in Washington? No, it is not. It is not. So I think there was a great deal of confusion. I think some people purposefully fed that fire and without understanding it, just to cause a little trouble. They seem to think that all of this Common Core was just a huge overreach on the part of the federal government, and to a certain extent, the way that the Secretary of Education used it to incentivize states to do certain things, I can certainly see why they came to that conclusion. The race to the top business and all of that as well. But I think that at the end of the day, Common Core state standards are a good thing. I also think that with the reauthorization of ESEA and with the idea that they're going to return more of this control back to the states, I think Common Core state standards may just slide by the wayside. This might be an issue that is taking care of itself. But
okay.
We'll see.
Well, how does the state budget for K-12 stand right now as we speak?
Well, as you know, the governor proposed over $2 billion for a budget for education in North Dakota. We won't know until the end of the legislature. My guess is in the last hours of the legislative session exactly how much money K-12 will receive. We would be happy if, the governor proposed 3.5%, the House proposed something around 2%, and the Senate proposed 3%. We would be very happy in light of the economic picture and the forecast that was laid out for us. The 3% something that we could live with and schools could do some very good things with in terms of meeting their obligations to their students and their communities.
So how do North Dakota schools and students stack up against the rest of the nation?
I think very, very well. I think that historically North Dakota students have scored above the national average on things like the ACT, and when you look at reading and math scores and the dropout rate, we do very, very well when you stack us up against the nation. There are some states that do better. There's way more states that do worse.
Okay. Well, changing now to what about property taxes and issues there?
Yeah, our union has almost nothing to do with property taxes,
Okay.
except that the employees that are our members, they do. I mean, property taxes matter a lot when you consider that their role in funding education, particularly at the local level. I know that the legislature and Representative Carlson would be happy to tell you that they have tackled that issue of property tax really for sessions now. Yet people's property taxes seem to keep going up. What they don't take into account is that the value of things has risen. So I don't know necessarily that there's going to be a short-term fix for that. I think that maybe one area that they might want to look at is coming up with some way of assessing things that people understand, because it is one thing. It's nice to say, hey, my property has accrued in value this much. That's great, but that's only great if you're looking to sell it. You know, if you're paying property taxes on it, then big deal. Now you're just paying higher taxes on it. So that's an issue that I think we're going to be wrestling with for quite some time.
Yeah, talk about what is the role of unions today. I mean, there are some people that think unions had a place in the past, and maybe they're you know, and now they're trying to bust unions, as we've seen in the nation. So can you comment on all this?
Yeah, I can, and I would agree. Unions did have a place in the past, but they also have a place in the future. Unions, there is a direct correlation, and I don't know if you've studied this much, but there is a direct correlation between the gap, the increasing gap in income inequality, and the demise of unions. Let's face it, for education unions, for example, for the last 30 years, there has just been a constant stream of negative attacks on education in this country. It used to be that people thought of education as the solution to America's problems. Now, if you listen to some quarters of this country and the community and the talking heads of this nation, they'll tell you that education is the cause of these problems, which is completely wrong, and it's wrong-headed to continue down that path. Unions, frankly, back in the 70s, they created an awful lot of problems for themselves. There is no doubt about it. Some of their associations with well, basically criminals. Not basically, criminals, yeah. That didn't put them in a very favorable light in the nation, and it shouldn't have. But I think that if you take a look at unions today, they are way more transparent than they've ever been. Their members demand it and expect it. So that I think that there is a place for unions in the future. How long is it going to be before people just say this inequality of income, of opportunity is just too much to bear? You know, if unions were so bad, why do people want union wages? Mm-hmm. And everywhere you have unions, you have higher wages. And that's good for the community as a whole.
Okay. Can you talk about what a right-to-work state is and some of the, I guess, efforts underway for some states to implement policies regarding right-to-work?
Well, right-to-work basically says that workers can't be compelled to join a union or have any of their wages go to any sort of unionism. For example, in Minnesota, there is a fair share thing that they have going on. And basically what fair share is that if you're a teacher, you pay a certain percentage of what the union rates are because the union negotiates your contracts for you, and that sort of thing. And the union has to, by law, represent everybody whether they're a member or not. So that contract that is negotiated by the union is the same contract that covers union and non-union workers. So there's the fair share law there. In North Dakota, we don't have that. So because we are a right-to-work state. So we don't get to charge non-members for the services that we provide them in terms of helping to negotiate contracts.
Okay. Can you tell me what your goals are for the union going forward?
Sure. What we would like to do, of course, is see growth. I mentioned that we are 20 months old as a union. When if we were a child, we would be putting together two-word sentences. And so I challenged our delegates last weekend. Hey, here's a two-word sentence. Let's grow. And that's exactly what we have to do. We need to reach out to people with whom we work and say, you know, your values are our values. Help us to make sure that you're represented in your values, and that we can work to improve your salaries, that we can work to improve the terms and conditions of your employment, all of those things. And that's what I would like to do, because the more that we can advocate for our members, the more we can advocate for children.
Well, with that said, if people want more information, where can they go?
They can go to www.ndunited.org, and they can find us on Facebook.
All right. Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us
Well,
today.
hey, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, that's all we have on Prairie Post this week. And as always, thanks for watching.